worked on a lot of legislation to increase the quality for the residents in our SRO buildings, many of whom are families, seniors, formerly homeless. So things like the mailbox legislation. We have the right to get mail in our buildings if we live in an SRO, and the post office should install the mailboxes. Sprinkler legislation. We need to make sure that our units are safe. Visitor policies, because it was inconsistent throughout the city. I mean, there are certain things that you want to make sure that you include, but also you do want to make sure that you have the right to have your family and your friends come over to your unit. That's part of us building community. I think that we still have a lot of work to do. I think that we've made great strides over the last 10 years in terms of legislation, and that we need to work harder on doing more. One of the most important issues, of course, that's come up is enforcement of the bed bug policies. Every building should have written rules on how the building owner and operators plan to deal with bed bugs, right? It needs to be written up in the buildings. And if you have a bed bug infestation, within 72 hours they need to deal with it. We need to make sure that we're enforcing this. It's a huge issue in many of our buildings, not just our SROs, but throughout San Francisco. And we need to make sure that we have the resources for the city to enforce many of these quality of life issues.
Thank you, Jim Miko again. Do we have adequate protections? Not nearly, not enough at all. So long as so many of you live in SRO type housing, you're not going to have the full protections of the law behind you. You're covered by the hotel portion of the planning code and not by the housing portion of the planning code. And that's the really big deal, is we've got to move you all under the protections of the housing code.
That's right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is indecent. First of all, got to give a lot of credit to Chris Daly for all the protections that he has written into the law in the 10 years that he has served this district. To think that you have to actually argue for the right to have guests in your apartment, that you have to fight for the right to have a mailbox, to be treated with common decency and dignity. I give Chris a great deal of credit, and I would be profoundly honored if you would put me in City Hall. I assure you, you will have a place in my office if I'm elected. Thank you.
Well, I think we can all agree that we don't have enough protections now, and that the current laws are not being enforced. The agency that I run, the Human Rights Commission, is the agency that manages housing non-discrimination ordinances in the city, and we see every single day, and we have 3 inspectors and 3 people, and we're working with Rodney Howdy right now on a hotel here, that go into these hotels and see that the elevators are broken, to see black mold on the walls, see that the water system works only periodically. We see very, very poor conditions. We see infestations with cockroaches, with bed bugs. Jane's right, there should be a bed bug ordinance in the city that is enforced. I mean, quality of life is you can't have a decent quality of life without an ordinance like that is enforced. We need to do more. We need to put more people in place to do that, to enforce these regulations. Even if we just enforce the regulations we have now, it would substantially improve the quality of life of the people who are living in these SROs. So I absolutely agree. We need to put more resources into that. We need to make them habitable. And I think this is something we need to do very, very quickly. Thank you.
So there are some programs that are run through the Department of Building Inspection. The SRO Collaborative, many of you are here. This is one of the founder, or one of the sponsors of this event. Also the Code Enforcement Outreach Program. We need to fund those more and expand the reach of the outreach that goes out to these buildings. The bed bug issue, as Ms. Kim mentioned, is it's unexcusable that we haven't dealt better with that issue, but there are many issues. You all living in residential hotels know that. The mold issue, toilets that are plugged up and unusable. I have gone into numerous buildings where the community kitchen is not a kitchen. It's basically the water doesn't work. There's no more refrigerator or stove. Nobody can cook in it, and the water doesn't work in the sink. We need to enforce these issues, and I think that a lot of them are building and housing code issues. I do think I agree with Jim that we need to actually move the SROs underneath the housing code to give better protections, and especially around rent control. As you know, there are people on 6th Street in these small SROs charging up to $1,000 a month for rooms. That's inexcusable, and it's part of what we need to do in a whole sort of reform of the SRO universe. So the other issue is that we need to look at when developments come forward, like the CPMC proposal that is displacing some of these rooms, we need to make sure that there's a no demolition policy without replacement. We need to make sure that we don't lose these rooms, because the best way to save affordable housing is to save the stock that's here. Thank you.
So I definitely agree with a lot of the things that have been said, but I think I would like to go a little further and start holding bad landlords accountable for how they're treating people in SROs. There's a lot of three-strike policies out there. I think that we need to be able to take back the running of a hotel from a landlord that is not treating the people with dignity in that hotel. And we need to give it to organizations that have proven track records to run that for them. And I think that's one of the ways that we're definitely going to continue to extend more dignity to the community in their SROs.
New Leaf is ready.
Thank you very much. My name is James Keys, and I am running for District 6 Supervisor. And I have to say that I think that a lot of my fellow people up here have got it wrong. You know what? I am the person that created the bed bug policy for the Department of Health for the City and County of San Francisco, and I had great help from Central City SRO. We were able to, through the supervisor Chris Daly's office, put money into Central City SRO to work with those managers to clean up the bed bug problem. You know, the reason that came to light is because when I was living at the Ritz Hotel, and I lived at the Ritz Hotel for 6 years. Before that I lived at the Crystal, and before that I lived at the Keene. You know, I was deadly afraid of bed bugs. I did not want some bug coming up and, biting me. And so when it came a real epidemic, I went to Chris Daly, and he said, let's do it. And I worked with Bobby Lopez and Elizabeth Alexander, and we got that. We wanted to make it into legislation, as one of the candidates, Teresa Sparks, said, but we weren't allowed to make it into legislation because that would tie the hands of the Department of Public Health. So we turned it into policy, and that policy is still in effect. Okay? So as far as the mailbox sprinkler legislation that also came out of Supervisor Daly's office, I was right there with him when he did that. I was working side by side. He even had me going into the SROs. And that's why Chris Daly endorsed me, James Keys, as the next supervisor for District 6, because I do the work.